We noticed that Luke was different right away. When he was a baby, we would change his diaper and there would be bruises where our hands were just on his legs. He'd fall down, the same sort of injuries that his older brother would have, but he would need like 10 stitches and just very easily cut, very easily bruising, these huge bruises.
I just put in, like, she sleeps with her eyes open, translucent skin, easy bruising, and the first thing that came up was vascular Ehlers-Danlos.
So I met with a geneticist. I was with my mom, and one of like the big things was her, saying like, oh, and like, I'm sure you know about the life expectancy. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, right now we're looking at like 48 years old. And I had never felt just so outside of my body during that appointment. Like, it was a very, I don't even know how to further describe it other than I just didn't feel like I was in my body anymore. Like, it was just like, no, like there's no way, like she has to be talking about someone else.
This is a tough subject. We've talked about this. Your life expectancy is low. It's a hard truth, and you're thinking about it all the time. And every time you have the smallest little pain, you think you're going to die. It's a legitimate concern.
Is at that point where the world changed. They pulled me out of the CT scanner, and I went to sit up, and they immediately said, no, you don't get to move anymore. And I'm like, I have to get up. They're like, you don't move now. And 4 people came in, they lifted me on the sheet, put me onto a gurney, and they're like, you need to just not move. I'm not really knowing what's going on. Obviously, they had found something on that CT, thank God. And the next thing you know, I'm being wheeled into more of a permanent room that has some of the facilities to take care of somebody who's in danger. And it was at that point they told us that, hey, we've identified these 3 aneurysms.
So they took me back to that area where they were working on him. And I remember listening to them talking, and one of the doctors was filling in a different doctor, and he's like, so this kid has Ehlers-Danlos. And it was like, once again, I was like, I remember screaming, he has vascular Ehlers-Danlos. They just, no matter how many times you say it, no matter how many times, they just don't listen. And it just progressively got worse. They were doing checks on him every minute to find a pulse. There was no pulse. They were doing CPR on him with a machine as they were working. And it was just like, I just knew that like things were not going to be okay. And luckily I got to sit there with him, and I got to hold his hand and talk to him. And eventually they said, would anybody object if I called it? And they didn't object, and they called us that.
I think we really need to make sure to be listening to the families. And so I think, it's hard and it's busy, and you think you've seen this before, but this really is a really different condition. And when the families say something's wrong, to really pay attention, and also to really listen to the providers, reach out to their pediatrician, their cardiologist, their geneticist, their vascular surgeon, whoever the family says, hey, could you call this person? Because this is a scary condition, and these families have been working usually through this for a long time, and they sort of know when something is wrong.
VEDS is so different than classic type. So we've got the blanket statement. So now let's look down into subgroups, because VEDS is dramatically different and severely different. So making sure that they are being taught this is definitely step 1 for sure. And just listening to us.
It's hard because when we have such great moments and your daughter is your best friend, I want it forever. And it's hard because it's like VEDS is always like the elephant in the room. And I don't want it to rob me from it. It's a mental challenge to not have VEDS rob you from being present.